Hello and welcome back to another piano video. This is going to be the start of a new series. I think that I gave you enough to work with chords and scales. So the thing that this naturally leads us to is, like, I guess you could say we've had one hand clapping, the other is musical notation. Because everything that I've told you has been stuff that you can figure out just by playing at the keyboard. But if you want to learn music, you're going to have to learn how to read music, stuff that looks like this. And what I hope to show you is how when you look at this stuff here, eventually you'll see a map. In your head, you're going to visualize the piano, and you'll be able to look at these lines and spaces in here and right away know what key to hit. And that is going to let you learn absolutely anything. I've been playing piano for about 30 years, and the great thing that comes from all this practice, I can open any music of pretty much anything, and I can read it like a book. Like some of the technique is challenging, so often I'll, have to play it slow or work it out, but I can read it. It's beautiful. It's this process you develop from practice. And I'm going to show you in this next series all the little steps that come together that once you know them, it's just a matter of practicing. And soon you can too develop that skill, and it's beautiful. It's like being able to read a book and have a story come to life. Except in this case, the story that comes to life is the music you can fill your living room or your house with. So, I'm improvising a bit, and here, so what I'm gonna do is raise the camera up here, kind of plan this ahead of time, and go down to the keyboard. There's my happy face, right? Because always happy. It's always a good way to be in life. So here's the thing. These videos I turn on, I do not edit them. Now the reason I do this is because I like this idea that right now I feel like I'm talking to you live. I can't cut out anything I say. So what this means is I don't have tricks like the ability to put in some kind of, fancy graphic, which I know that there are some really great musical instruction videos you could watch, and they can do a lot better job than I can as far as all the visual and the digital stuff. What I want you to do, though, is I want you to feel like you're here in my classroom, like you're here with me for about 15-20 minutes. I'm going to teach you something. Every day, my video will pop up in your YouTube feed, and you can watch it and learn a little something new. So this means we're going to be creative. My happy face, this is actually a whiteboard, and we're going to get used to this in our lessons to come. So what I want to do first is I'm going to just show you the basics of how the music notation works. So we're going to draw out the lines. Okay. So when you're looking at music, there are always 5 lines on the top and 5 lines on the bottom. So it goes a little like this. So the second line, the third line, the fourth line, and the fifth line. Now the reason I'm taking the time to draw this now, this is in a kind of semi-permanent marker. I mean, I can wipe it off with a chemical. But every time now we're going to have these lines on here, and I will be able to erase the notes we do so we can keep. It's kind of like a smart blackboard. At least the best I can do without the digital technology. Someday maybe I'll get a smart screen I can add to this. But right now, I think it's important. In this age we live in with computers and everything at our fingertips, I think it's good when we can reconnect with being able to do things with like pencil and paper or basically by hand, where you're not relying on fancy technology. A lot of times we forget we're even capable of still using a marker and a paper or whatnot. So it's good to practice this. So here we go. What I've just done here is, now I'm going to try and work your way because you're looking at me. It'll be upside down from my perspective. So one thing you notice here, there are supposed to be 5 lines. Forgot one. Oh no, there are 5. Just not counting right today. So there are 5 lines on the top and 5 lines on the bottom, and there is a vertical line that joins them together. When you read music, you're reading from the left to the right. Okay, so you're going like this way. Okay. What I want to also show you is I'm actually, I'm going to open up this book here. Well, I mean, it's open. This is one of the pieces I work on. It's a Chopin etude. But you'll notice, if you look up close, right here at the start, right, there are, I hope that's not upside down for you, but you see right here, this is the start of the bar. There are 5 lines. It's a bit smaller than what I drew, but that's basically every single piece of music, anything you're going to read. This idea that you have this vertical bar, and then you have 5 horizontal lines on the top and 5 horizontal lines on the bottom, and you read from the left to the right. I'm gonna have to watch this after, because to me it looks like it's upside down, but I think it's the right way for you. So this board is just a nice bigger display for what I'm going to teach you. Okay, now let's do something, put something together that I taught you early on in our series about the piano. Okay, so I'm going to sit down at the piano here so you can see the whole thing. I taught you how to find all the C's on the piano, and that was to take this cluster of 2 black keys, right, 3 black keys. You look for this basic pattern. To the left of the 2 black keys is every C. Now notice something. We call this here the middle C, and that's because if you kind of take the piano, put your hands together, and you make like an axe. Right, it kind of comes through about right here. In the previous videos when I was talking about the way you add sharps and flats, I had you like imagine you put a mirror here on this. So this would be D, this note here, right? It's to the right of middle C. And then that was how we remembered what order to add flats when we go down the circle of fifths and sharps when we go up the circle of fifths. Well, I kind of picked that image because I want to prepare you for another reason that's important. This idea of chopping the piano in half. Okay. Let's say we cut the piano in half at middle C. Okay, let's go to this board here. This board, right? 5 lines on the top, 5 lines on the bottom, and then this space here. I'm going to chop it in half, okay? By doing something like, let's get rid of this line, like this. Okay? See that black line? This is middle C, and what we usually do is we just fill it in. There are, I'm going to teach you rhythm in a different series. I'm going to save rhythm and how that all works for maybe a series after this one, when we've covered all the basics of notation. But there's a reason why sometimes you'll see, you know, like a circle or there's a tail. Sometimes you see this thing, right? It's called an eighth note. We're going to get to that later. Right now, what really matters is just this idea that if you want to fill in the note, you can either, you can fill it in kind of like, imagine it's like a period, but you squashed it a bit. And usually it's like, it takes on an oval shape that goes from the left up to the right. That's kind of how we will draw it. But so when we're indicating a note on, like when we're writing musical notation, we circle it in. So this line here, by circling kind of around it, I am telling you to hit this note, okay? And the idea that if you chopped the piano in half, right here, at middle C, this note is C, okay? So we look at like this music, this complicated music here, and all we have to do, if we go from the top, Like, look right where my finger is pointing here. You'll see it. See those two notes there? Those are both middle C because it's the line right below this here. And then likewise, you'll notice here, there's also these two notes and they've got a line drawn in there. Okay, let's quickly talk about that because this is a good way to remember that this thing is middle C. In practice though, when people write music, they will usually space, so what they do is they add this extra little line, okay? Called a grace line. Could be wrong about that. I'll look that up later. But anyway, this extra line. Now these are the same note. It's just rather than writing it like in this space, because sometimes there will be more than one, right? And we'll talk about why that happens. Has to do with see, this upper part is usually because it's the upper part of the piano. It's your right hand. The lower part is your left hand. Okay, so really all the stuff you're going to see down here is usually telling you this is what you do with your left hand. And then the stuff up here is saying this is what you do with the right hand. Why is that? Because when you're at the piano, your right hand is mostly going to be playing like this. And your left hand is going to be playing like this on the left of middle C. So when we look at musical notation, this stuff on the bottom corresponds to the left half of the piano. Just think bottom, left hand, you know, low notes. That's a good way to remember bottom and left hand because your left hand hits the low notes. Your right hand hits the high notes. That's just a quick way to remember, okay? So the bottom, low, left hand. So if we can remember that this kind of one line below is middle C, you can either have it here up at the top or here at the bottom, okay? But remember, it's just this idea that if you cut this right in half, that'd be middle C. So all these notes above here are the remaining notes that we get as we go up from middle C. Okay, so let's quickly draw this in on here. I can just, using this circle, that's just the space. Now I'm on the next line. Now I'm in the space. Now I'm on the second line. I'm in the space between the second and third line. I'm on the third line, right? In the space between the third and the fourth line. On the fourth line. In the space between the fourth and the fifth line. And then up on the sixth line. Okay? Draw this a little longer here. I'll do that next. I'll do that later. I don't want to screw up the black stuff. Anyway, the idea here, this trend. You go up a space, a line, a space, a line. Just think of it as all the logical things you can fill. If you want an analogy, when we went up the semitones of the piano, we thought like that, okay? Like, when you think of what is the rightmost neighbor, right? Like, let's just say from C to D, well, there's a black key in the way. So you just think if your hand is going up like very slowly this way, what is like the next note is going to hit? And you're going to get something like this. That's called a chromatic scale because it's basically just the semitones. Okay, but this idea of going to the rightmost, think like that with these notes here. What are the logical options? You could almost imagine like the white space is like a black key, the line is like a white key. That's kind of, you know, it's not exactly what's happening, but it's a similar principle. Like all you're allowed to do on here is either fill in a space or a line, and they go in order. So in other words, the space below this lowest line here is a note lower than this, the note that is on the line itself. And then the space above the line is the note that is above the note that is here. So really what's happening, if we have no sharps or flats, this is just telling us this is a map of the white keys on the keyboard. So if we're going from middle C and we want to follow this, the next note in the space here is D. And then the next note here is E, and then we have F, and then we have G, and then we have A, and then we have B, and then we have C. And we can keep going, right? As long as we have lines and spaces. So this is E, and then that last one that's on this top line, that is F. So what this map has just shown us is how to go from C to F. From this middle C on the piano to this F. Right? So each line and space translates to one note. Okay, well what about all these notes? That's a good question. This is why you see this little line here we drew for the middle C. Well, we can do the same thing above, right? So if we just drew a little line in, and you'll see that happen in music. Like I'm going to show you the example of this piece that I play. Notice at the top here, like right here for this note, there's like 3 lines drawn, okay? So this note up here is actually an E. Now I'll tell you why. That's because the top line is F. So if we can keep walking up, when we draw one line above, that lets us take 2 more notes up. So we go G, A, then we draw another line above, B, C, and then we draw another line above. So that's those 3 lines that were there, D, E. Okay, so that map there lets us extend it. Now there is another notation that was often used in music. It's written 8 VA, and that means just play an octave higher. So if we need to go higher than these notes, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll write that in. Okay, so notice that right here in this spot, there's a little dotted line. It says 8 VA. What this is saying is when you hit these, you're going to go an octave higher than where they would actually map to. So that's how we get all the way to the top of the piano. Okay? Now the left of the piano is the same idea. It's just you're going down. Okay? Left hand down, low notes, right? So we would start here. This line above is middle C. And we could walk our way down, right? So like this, top line, space between the top and fourth line, space, third line, space, fourth line, space, bottom line, okay? And what we would do is we go space line, like, so that alternation is each a white key, starting on middle C. So if I want to walk down, I got this. Actually, I'm going to use my marker. So let's start at the top. Okay, so that bottom line takes me to G. So the top took me to F. The bottom takes me down to G. Now likewise, if you want to go even further, that's where you draw these little lines below, right? After this video, I'm going to redraw this, something that will give me space on both sides. I wanted to just improvise it today because I had the idea, but next time I'm going to have one drawn so that it'll be easier to work with and we can see more of these. But in this music here, let me show you. So right here, this is the bottom 5 lines, right? So this would be the left hand. And notice that below, there is this thing here where you have a line and a line. And then there's a note filled in right here. So 2 lines, that's actually C. Let me show you why. Because when we go down all this here, we get down to G. So if we add a line, we can go a space and a line. That takes us to E. And then we add that second line. That takes us D-E. So space line. Okay, so basically that just mapped us down 2 octaves. Now, they do the same kind of thing here when you're going lower with the left hand. I can't find an example in here, but there's a notation like the 8 VA, but it's called 8 VB. B stands for bass, so that's how to remember them, right? A is you just think A ascending or the, you know, the higher notes, but B stands for bass. Okay, so it's the same idea. Like whatever notes you hit, you just play them an octave lower. So that is how basically this simple thing here is a map that centers around this middle C, and it gives you the right hand on the upper and the left hand on the lower. And that is musical notation in a nutshell. I will go back in more detail because we can talk a little bit more about this. Especially, we can talk about all those keys we learned, right? Like D major, right? Or E major, the sharps, the flats. What do they look like on here? And once we know that, we have everything we need to know in order to read music, except for rhythm, which we'll get to. That's going to be another series. But for right now, just knowing what the notes are called, being able to look at this and know what notes you have to hit with your finger, that is huge. Once you know that, you're on your way to learning all about piano and how to really take anything and work it out. Once you can work it out, the skill to sight read and to learn it, that comes with practice. But this is huge. So anyway, I hope you're as excited as I am. I'm kind of super excited to talk about this from everywhere that we've gone so far. I've gone a little bit longer today, but part of that is because I finally caved in and I decided to pay Apple the $1.99 a month or whatever, so that I can have, it's, you know, like my videos were crashing before because I have storage problems in my phone. So I finally paid that. I can go a little longer. I don't have to worry about these crashing. I do still want to keep these about 15-20 minutes. It's just like a little lesson. I don't want to leave you with too much. But this way, at least, I can reach the proper end. We can get it. I'm not getting cut off prematurely on something. So this time I feel like we've got a good introduction. Next time I'm going to revise this a bit so that I can show you a little bit more, and we're going to start exploring the worlds of sharps and flats and those 24 different keys that we learned about. And that'll be the goal of this series. By the end of it, you're going to know it all. You're going to have something, you can go and rewatch these videos, but you'll have everything you need to go back and figure it all out and start playing piano pieces from music you can find. You can buy it or print it. All right, so thanks for joining me. Let's go back down here. There we go. Yeah, so thanks for joining me. Your homework is to, well, see if you can duplicate this board, right? Draw it out, just like I drew today, and do those lines and spaces. Find the middle C by, you know, that chopping idea. So there's just this, either the line below the right, the upper one, or the line above the lower one, and see if you can work with that, because we're going to pick up more on that next time. If you enjoy these videos and you want to help me out, I have Patreon set up. It's patreon.com/JohnRobin. You can support me for as little as $3 a month. I would really appreciate it. That gives me some encouragement to kind of keep going with these videos. And I have big dreams for this. Like, you know, particularly I'd like to start making more videos. And so if I had the support, I'd put a bit more time into this. And I also start buying some equipment, like maybe a more high-tech board. Although this is fun. Like, this is, you know, just, it's so nice to just get out markers and a whiteboard. Remember that we're not made of machines, you know. So anyway, hope you practice and you enjoy the piano today and apply what you've learned. Until next time, yeah, have fun. I'm gonna start practicing this piece as soon as I turn this off. All right, have a good day.